Well, hello and welcome to episode 224 of Retro Power Uncut. We're going to start with XJC. Getting perilously close to the end of metalwork. We are within a very close distance. We were hoping to blast this week. I probably said that last week. We're not quite going to get there, but we are very, very close. We should be blasting and zinking this next week. We are just on the final bit, which is where Cal's been around, adding his little yellow markers, bits of masking tape just on the final nitpicks, the final things to try and remember. We're bound to miss something. The objective here is to try and make sure that anything we miss is only something minor, because we will miss something, guaranteed. But we've been adding threaded bosses for earthing points and for mounting points for things that were things that have been thought about subsequent to previous lists. Refining the list, going through grinding off and finishing a lot of welds, and then Stu has stripped the car down. Stu's removed the engine and gearbox. The engine is now stripped, I believe, but we'll leave that to be covered in the assembly shop, I think. But yeah, Stu has removed the front cross member, he's removed the rear cross member, he's pulled the engine and gearbox off the cross member, and both of those are now, the front and rear suspension assemblies are now on a pallet awaiting strip down, but we're not going to strip them down just yet because there's a lot of things that are stripped down here at the moment. We don't want to add to the pile of suspension parts in pieces just yet until we can actually do something with processes with them. We need some things to return from finishing processes before we strip down the next round of bits to send out for finishing, so it doesn't get too much, so there's not too much chaos going on there. But yes, so strip down's done of the body shell, so pretty much everything is off it now. I think Stu's literally just removed the dash, which was one of the few bits that was left on. He'd left that in place to finish off some bits of metal work on that. So I've just been welding in some bosses inside, giving Stu a hand, clambering in and out of the car, doing a few little bits of weld finishing. And then also working on the car as well has been Matt, who has been doing some work here, as you can see, getting the lead work on the rear arches done. They needed a little bit of tidying up, which I think we've mentioned previously, and Matt's now done that and got them beautifully crisp. Now, we're not going to leave that razor sharp edge there. However, it's very nice to have that sharp edge when we start doing body preppers. It's a very good guide. So actually we are going to leave that at the moment, but we'll round that off during the body prep process prior to initial stages of paintwork. But at the moment we're going to leave that edge there because it will naturally be rounded off by the processes of the sanding work and the addition of sprayed polyester to the body shell and and primer, etc., etc. That is going to naturally round that surface off. So that's why we're leaving that like that. But it does look, as you can see now, the arch shape. Now, there are various schools of thought as to the correct height for this. But the customer's decision is obviously final, and the customer wants the arch to be there. And we've got a couple of camps here. One camp agrees with that. One camp actually preferred the raised arch that we did on the previous XJC we did. But certainly the customer's request is for that position, and certainly Cal agreed with that. That's a good place to put it, and it's come out now. Now Matt's actually got that arch lip finished and the final smoothing out of the shape done. We've all agreed it does look absolutely stunning. The revised arch is very, very subtle. You'd have to have a photograph or a standard car parked next to this to actually see the difference, but it is a bit different. It's about 15 millimeters higher up and very slightly wider. So it is very subtly different, but it does make a little bit of a difference to the way the car looks. So anyway, a lot of waffle there. Basically the arch is done. Matt's now working on the other side, hence all the sort of chaos going on. He's just dealing with the other side. There's a few little discrepancies in the shape. He's just tidying those up and getting the lead work done on that. And also just checking the fit of the rear capping panels now. Now the arch finishing has been done, the metal finishing has been done on the arches. It's just checking that the rear capping panels still fit as well. And then we have trial fitted the rotisserie mounts again to make sure, and change the braces on the rear rotisserie mount just because of the way it was braced wasn't quite right. Now the car's been revised, the bits that bolted to aren't there anymore, so we've had to alter that slightly. Front rotisserie mount's been on, that all fits. So yeah, it's basically just the final bits. Things, as you can see, the marks here, there's little defects, there's some brackets that need altering, a little bit of lead needed tidying up on one front corner, a lot of cleaning up, and then it'll be over to the body shop guys to get all the outside DA'd off and cleaned up, remove any of this surface corrosion that's kicked off by the zinc chloride flux that's used for the lead solder on here. That's what causes this flash corrosion around those areas. And so that will be sanded off, and then they're going to prep the surface of the steel with a surface treatment that that phosphates the surface, and then it'll be through all the body prep that I'll let Mark talk about in possibly this episode. I'm not sure what Mark's going to talk about in terms of that, but certainly it'll be in next week's, if it's not in this week. So I'll let him talk about that when he comes to that. On that subject, I think that's about the end of what I'm going to talk about on XJC, because I think there'll be bits to cover next door. Moving on from that, Bobby has been working on door hinges again. Obviously the other side of the car is now complete on the initial side of the car, complete in terms of the structural work he needs to do in order to be able to build the A-pillars. It's not complete in terms of all of the metalwork done, but it's complete in terms of the structural stuff to be able to build the A-post. So he's now moved on to this side, which has obviously progressed a lot faster because he's been able to mirror what he did on that side. He's made some little fixtures to mirror the modifications to the doors and to the body shell. He's now got these boxes in place, which are a lot clearer now. They're just on show without a whole lot of bracketry around them. He's used some bracketry off the inside bracing of the shell to line things up, and then made these, then fixed the door, checked the door fit, made sure everything's good there, checked everything for level with the laser. The car's dead level on the jig. We level the jigs up just to sort of rewind on that one. We level the jigs with a machine level very precisely. Whenever we set a car up, the jigs, because the floor is very unlevel in here, they're all on screw jacks. Whenever we start a project, that jig is levelled, the screw jacks are all set, so the jig is level in both axes. It's level front to back, side to side, and there is no twist in it. And that is all set with a machine level at the very beginning of the job, so that any levels we take relative to that are correct, despite the floor not being great. So that's what we do. And anyway, Bobby has now checked that the hinge, everything's level and true with the hinges, fabricated these boxes, and they're now tacked in place. They'll get fully welded in place, and then the hinge pillar again will be built all around this bracing structure. This structure here is being removed and replaced with a slightly different structure, similar in some ways, but it won't have all these silly tabs sticking up on top like this. It'll be a simpler design, and the spot welds will be lower down. And that shape will generally be a bit different, but that's going to come back and then feed into this A-pillar structure, which is obviously around 60 millimetres further outboard than it would have been on the Saab. It's actually not that much more outboard than it was on the Audi, because the Audi A-pillar was quite wide. I think it's probably about 20 to 25 millimetres wider than the Audi A-pillar was. The outer part of the Audi A-pillar. So yeah, good progress there. Bobby's forging ahead now with that, and having got through the nightmare of actually working out the hinge geometry, trialling it, making sure the doors open and shut, making sure that the new bodywork outer line is going to clear as the doors open and shut, he's now able to progress with that quite quickly. And to that end, fabrication underway for the rear face of the revised A-pillar, which will be going there. So he's getting well on his way with that, so things are going very well there. That's pretty much where things are at on Wasabi in here. I'm going to swing out here now and head over in this general direction, because Martin has been busily working on the Aston roof again. He's been doing plenty of other work. He's not just been working on this, I hasten to add. He's only really just come back onto this again today. Did a little bit at the end of the play yesterday, and then he's been back onto this today. And he's now got the welds crushed down, ground off and filed down, and he's just now going over it with the slapper and dolly. So slapper and dolly, going over all of that, bringing up low spots, taking down high spots, and generally getting it all smoothed out to the sort of levels it needs to be. So it's just a huge amount of hammer and dolly and slapper and dolly work now to get all of that smooth. Once all that's done, or very close to done, he'll then jenny in that back edge, get that folded, and that is the Aston roof done. So that's really good work, as I say. Not bad for a handyman. He's a very, very, very good guy having the workshop, Martin is. We knew he was going to be invaluable, and he has made himself more invaluable than we thought possible. So top marks to Martin. He's doing a grand job. On that subject, walking past it now, That is the swaging machine, which he's now also finished putting together. The hydraulic pump's bolted down. He's done a little drip tray here just to catch the drips of oil. Everything's done, it's all bled up, it works. We've got a lever for forwards and backwards. Ram does what it's supposed to do, does its flares, or swages or whatever you want to call it, and it's on some wheels so we can wheel it around the workshop. So we're really pleased with that. That's all up and running and working, and a nice machine. So one of the other jobs that we're coming up is making some AC lines on it, but not done that yet. Also here, lurking in the workshop, this has come back. It's actually been in the back of our van for a while because we had nowhere better to put it, and we could do without it being in the middle of the workshop, but we're struggling on space to put it, to be quite honest. This is the book that we made for that. So it's interesting seeing the two together, because I don't know if we'd have any footage of that previously, certainly not post its use, because this was down at Vintage Machines with Andy Hall while he was making the back for that car, and then he hasn't got a lot of space, so that came back a while ago, but as I say, it's been in the back of our van. But this was the book that was drawn on CAD, was then sliced to make all of the CAD sections. Luke sliced all that up to make these sections, so we got all the sections drawn in CAD with all the teeth in them to allow them to engage together. Then James machined all of those out on our CNC router next door, and then assembled it all in the workshop, got it all put together. We actually put it roughly on some sort of wooden sticks to prop it up on, but Andy's put it on a bit of a metal support frame. And then the rear section was in tooling board, the wheel arch sections each side here. These are in Rubik's tooling board from a company called Rubik's over in Kings Lynn, who are a UK-based tooling board manufacturer. I believe they're the only UK-based tooling board manufacturer, though I might be corrected on that. And very good stuff it is too. Generally, this is an equivalent of an epoxy tooling board. It's actually not. It's a recycled resin, I believe, that's used in this to try and minimise environmental impact. But this is used for a lot of carbon fibre mould tools made for manufacturing carbon fibre parts in the Formula One industry. But it's just about strong enough to also use as a hammer form, as long as you're not trying to use it too many times, and it's a lot more economic than using the sort of 1 tonne per cubic metre or 1200 kilo a cubic metre type polyurethane tooling boards, the green type boards. This is a lot more economic than that. It's quite a bit cheaper, so it adds up. It's quite useful stuff. And then all of this top section is a fiberglass splash that Andy took from the original boot area on the car, so that we've got a pattern to go through, and he got something to chase the shape for the boot aperture into. So that's what this green bit on top is. That's fiberglass that was laid in on there. So that's what that's all. They're all an aside really, but that's what that's doing. That's what that is doing in the middle of the workshop. On the subject of E-Type, I'm going to go past that, because that's really the same place from a fabrication point of view. That's where it was last week. Work has gone on elsewhere, but from a fabrication point of view, that's where it was last week. And I think at that point, unless I've missed something, I think we're pretty much wrapped up. There's been a lot of focus on XJC, so there's been a lot going on there. It feels like chaos in my head because there's so many little jobs. So I think Jamie's probably picked up on a lot of that with bits of footage around the workshop. But yeah, there's been a lot going on, but it's been lots and lots and lots of very small jobs. I think at that point, I'm standing amidst bits of my own car lying around again in the workshop. I've been trying to spend the odd hour or two in the evenings getting bits done on this, so I've done a few little tweaks and bits to that. But I think I'm going to hand over now to Mark to take you through what's going on in the body shop, because some of the XJC has progressed in there now. So over to Mark.
All right, welcome back to another week of prep work. So now we're going to bring you back down to earth from all the technical stuff. Nat's probably been on a tangent, going mental, I've got to do this, got to do that. No, we're going to bring you back down to earth for a bit. Right, so this week, I think at the end of last week, you've seen us with all this in bare metal. We're treating it with the sticky hand treatment. No, that anti-rust thing just takes all the rust off. So then I got them into epoxy, gave them all 2 coats each. Now it's the filler work stage while we're still waiting for the car. We've been told could be Wednesday next week, hopefully. So yeah, so these guys have just been doing light filler work, just get them like laser straightforward, put some polyester on. because we'll get the car ready, check that for dents and stuff. Then we'll polyester it, we'll build the car up, polyester the whole lot, so we've got a nice even coat over to block the lot. So yeah, that's it for the Jag this week. Like I say, I'm not going to go into, it's filler work. They're just 80 grit in it. And then what do we go down to, guys? 120 before polyester, maybe a bit of 180, just so we don't get no shrinkage in the grooves. And then now I'm soldering on with this stuff, the Jensen alley grills and stuff. I've got to get all the chips out of the aluminium here and filing them all. Jamie will get you some footage of that later. So I've got to get them all nice. And all this is going to go matte black. I'll put some fine line over there, the polished aluminium bits, whip that off, matte lacquer all over it. No, it look proper nice then. So yeah, I'm not going to bore you anymore. So I'll catch you next week.
So thank you very much, Mark. And on that note, I think we're going to go next door, speak to Cal, see what's happened in the assembly shop, catch up in there. Thank you very much, Nat. We start next to Project Churchill, which, very excitingly, has an engine in it. And I speculated that that might happen last week, which usually means it doesn't happen. But on this occasion, yes, true to my expectation, we buttoned up the last bits of engine build, got the engine and transmission mated up, and then, did the precarious job of getting that engine fitted, and it is extraordinarily tight. I remember thinking this when they were putting it in and out during dry build. Those AJ16s, and in fact the 6, the earlier version, they're a big old engine. For some reason they seem a lot, well, I think perhaps they are physically a fair bit bigger than the XK6 engine, of which they were a development. But yeah, it's a big old straight 6. It's quite funny looking in the engine bay on Project Utah when you see the 2JZ in there, which just looks like a little tiny baby engine in there. But yeah, it looks really good in there though. And yeah, it opens up a load of avenues now, so we can start finishing off a lot of the ancillary build-up. So we've got the aircon compressor on, which Anthony's now done, the alternator on. They have to go on afterwards, and you'll see they sort of sit into a little aperture we cut into the body there that then have some bolt-on access panels that are bulged, so you can actually get to them for servicing work. You can remove those panels and access those. So they're on there. Now we can start doing the rest of the plumbing up, so we can get the aircon pipe work in, we can get the power steering pipe work in now, we can finish the fuel plumbing. So yeah, lots of avenues opened up. We're also going to get on with things now like the shifter cable installation, we can get the transmission wiring in. Opens up so many avenues, basically. We can get the exhaust system, etc. in there, so we are just going to be going through the motions. And actually, it's quite a nice little recap that the front cross member is sitting here, because that's been in the car for so long that any more recent followers of ours won't have seen this assembly, but this was a full, pretty much a scratch design by George. It uses, I think it's X300 XJ lower arms and hub carriers with our own upper arms, our own design subframe, a steering rack, which I think was from a company called Detroit Speed in the States. I don't know if they actually make it. I suspect they supply them, and it is based on something else, likely something American, but it was just the perfect rack in terms of dimensions. Being a left-hand drive car, it needs to obviously have the pinion on the left as well. So yeah, it's a good opportunity to see that front subframe before that goes back in. And the engine isn't magically floating there, it is actually mounted to the body rather than to the chassis legs rather than to the subframe. But yeah, it's very, very exciting times on this. We'll be able to fly through that, and then things are coming together quite nicely on some of the interior. Luke will no doubt talk to you about that shortly, but a lot of the 3D print stuff's coming together well, so the console, the offside rear card, so Rich would be able to get on with upholstering that, and as soon as he's done that, he can do the back seat, and then in the meantime then he should be cracking on with the front door cards. So very excited to see all that coming together. Moving on from that, in the background behind us here, Project Kuma. In fact, I don't know whether we can get maybe a slightly better shot than this by coming over here. I'll temporarily move this. So, again, as I speculated, I think last week, we were potentially going to be in a position to fire this up, and we did. So, first fire up all went very nicely. Alex has kind of just been running it up, monitoring the logs. Was generally looking great. However, slight setback on it is that when we check the coolant after we'd run it up for a couple of hours, we seem to be getting oil in the coolant, which we're not sure. Our first thought was it must be something we've done, as is often the case when you've got stuff from other people, reputable people, you kind of go straight to the it must be us. But we've got an oil to water oil cooler. Well, water to oil cooler in the bottom of the radiator, and we thought, well, maybe the core on that is leaking, and therefore it's getting oil into the coolant from there. But we've taken that out and pressure tested it, and it seems okay. So my suspicion is there's some kind of casting defect in the head of the block that's leaking between an oil and waterway potentially. So I think we're going to have to take the engine back out of this. And probably get it back to Sherwood for him to have a go over and see if he can work out what's going on. I can't really think at this stage. We've been scratching our heads thinking what else could it be, and I really don't think it could be anything else. We've been going over the logs, making sure there was no anomalies there. Oil pressure all looked good, so we weren't spiking to any excessively high oil pressure that might have caused a problem. Everything looked great on the logs, so yes. Good and bad, basically. It's fantastic that it was up and running, and from our point of view, everything went smoothly and it all ran well. But we've got a bit of a what on earth was that? Some sort of noise of doom next door. Yes, we have a bit of a coolant and oil mixing problem, so we're going to have to investigate that further. But yeah, in other news on this, it's just really needs to go together. We've got to put the wing mirrors on, then the door cards can go in. We've had the instrument binnacle in. We were taking it back out for a couple of bits of fault finding. But yeah, largely the car is done. The boot lid you can see is on now. We've got the bonnet is ready to go on. I just need to fit the gas struts onto the hinges before we fit the bonnet. It's just putting the grille on and a couple of other minor details. But yeah, slight setback in that I think we're going to have to have the engine back out to investigate what's going on with that. So that is that. What else we got going on? So Allegro that I can see. In fact, actually, if we spin around this way, I think we'll get a lovely double Allegro shot. I'll stand here somewhere. Look at these. So Alex is carrying on with the wiring. He's now doing the rope layout for the rear loom. Essentially, he's done the design for the rear loom. It's now just laying out the actual routing of it so we can get the dimensions in place so we can actually start then making it. As part of that, we were struggling a little bit with getting a nice clean routing of the rear leg of the loom from the near side of the car to the offside, and decided to make a little aluminium channel that basically is bolted under the front edge of the parcel shelf there, which just gives us a nice conduit, if you like, to run the loom across from one side to the other. But yeah, other than that, it's just going through the motions of getting all those measurements in place, and then we can start translating that into actual wires. And then a couple of other little bits. In fact, actually, I don't think did this car have the skirts on last week? Did it? Okay, I thought that was new news, but apparently not. But it does look awesome now. I think it's the first time I've stood back and looked at this car with the skirts on, with the wheels on. And it's actually getting closer. Like originally, it was a no-brainer that I preferred the look of this one. And I think the more I see that one come together, I'm liking it more. I think this would still be my choice, especially once all the brown leather's in. But yeah, it's getting a bit closer. But yeah, interior-wise, Something I think was just done last week but didn't mention it was Luke's now plasma cut the inserts that go into the dash. They have a load of little 3D printed ribs on them. That's part of the design. That'll be wrapped in leather, and then that goes into that section of the dash. So on the upper part of the dash, the leather will just wrap under that little infill panel. So we haven't got to get an excess of seams in there. It kind of allows us to end the leather at a point we would need a seam and have a separate panel in there. So that's all looking pretty good. We are just in the process of printing the central lower part of the dash. We had a right game with this. I wanted to do it as one piece because it's quite a big piece. It's too big to print in one piece in our printer. And although we're doing a lot of parts where we're doing multi-piece prints and bonding them together, that piece being quite a prominent part of the dash, I was more inclined to do it in one piece. So we subbed that out. And then I was massively let down by the supplier that we subbed it to, in that they called me after it was supposed to have been delivered to say they hadn't found anyone they could sub the work out to. And by the way, if they were to find somebody, I think the price was going to be like £1,000 more than they originally said, which was originally 300 and something. So suddenly it was 1,300 and something. To which obviously I wasn't very impressed. And so after that disappointment, I've basically just decided to do it as a sectional 3D print and make sure you can dowel it and bond it and make sure it's very strong. And then the same company also were entrusted to do an armrest for the Capri that we've been doing the interior on down in the den, and sent me what is probably the worst piece of 3D printing I've ever seen. It's as if it was done on a sort of kids play my first 3D printer. It's warped and has about the definition of, I don't even know what. Anyway, this has only led to me trying to bring more 3D printing in-house. However, we do have some good talks in place with a couple of other subcontract 3D printers, hopefully, which I hopefully will be able to report back on them being good in a positive light. Anyway, massive tangent. That was almost a Nat trademark tangent, wasn't it, that? Long story short, Dash should be going together on that pretty soon. I feel like there was something else on that I was going to talk about, but I can't remember what it was. So rather than stand here floundering, I shall simply hand over to the CAD vestibule.
Hi guys, welcome back to another week in the CAD Park Ferme. I notice every single time that I watch the videos, I always look like I'm leaning forward a bunch, but that's because I always sit when I'm designing all the way back on the chair. So I'm sorry if I look weird sitting down, but this week, okay, I'm going to start with the Churchill, I think. So over the last few weeks, you've seen us put together the rear door cards. They're now trimmed. One side's in the car. Looked really good. I'm really happy with it. And then the other side, I've literally just finished printing all the parts for it. I'm cleaning right here the last piece of that door card, which I'm emphasizing because through no one's fault really, just getting used to manufacturing a lot of big parts on a 3D printer in sections, we've had a lot of issues with getting them kind of right. But we tackled that end of last week, so I've now printed all the sections for the next rear door card. Cleaning out the sport material for the last one now. As you can tell by the state of my finger, I love cleaning sport material. So after this video is done, I'm going to start bonding together that, so that can go back over to Richard for that to be trimmed. And then we've also now got the rear section of the center console bonded together and screwed onto the mount, which is just out there. So Richard can put that in the car, put both door cards on, and then start shaping the rear seats and get those trimmed as well. And then that leads on to the work that I was doing at the beginning of the week, which is getting the front door cards ready. Cal had a look over them, relatively happy. I think there was just like one minor change that we had to make to do with where the door handle was going to sit. And then, honestly, I believe that's ready to print now. I've just prototyped the dash end caps, because obviously that's pretty important with how that interacts with the front of the door card. So when the car's not all the way up in the air, I can test that, and then we can start manufacturing the rear door card. Then, after that, pretty exciting, new car to me, the MGB GT, the V8 that's down at the den, starting on the interior work for that. So I went down to the den, scanned the center console area for that, because that's getting a whole new center console. They literally had no interior other than a dashboard and a few gauges beforehand. It's in between the seats, it's just carpet and a gear stick. So he wanted a bit more practicality. We've got cup holders, we've got 2 cubby holes, so you're just spoilt for choice with storage. and it's a pretty cool like offset to one side design because the gear stick's actually offset to one side in the tunnel. I think that's going to look pretty cool. So that was designed along with what we affectionately called the dog bowl. It's still got support material on it, but I could test what I needed to test. This is a rear speaker housing for the, front speaker housing for the MG. So that sits down in the front kick panel like that. Speaker goes in there, little air hole in there, and then on top of that, the rear speaker brackets as well, which are just very simple rectangular brackets, fold. Mounts onto the rear shelf, not the rear shelf, the rear of where a back seat would be, but it's an MG, so it doesn't have a back seat, and then the roof comes down over that. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it, to be honest. George has been on with nothing. No, I'm joking. George has been on with a loads. It doesn't ever look like he's done a lot, but I can assure you, I can assure you that actually he's done more than anyone could possibly imagine, because he's pretty much just designing a chassis from scratch, which is insane. So that has come leaps and bounds now, and we're getting to a point where it's actually pretty close. I'm not going to jinx him, because if I say that, now he's going to find something which is... Got to start again, everyone. But no, that's looking awesome. Oh, I can't say that. That's looking beep awesome, and yeah, really excited to see that come to a head. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Welcome back from the CAD vestibule, or Parc Ferme as apparently it's now called. Something I almost missed, but the Jag engine that is sitting next to me, which is also an AJ16, the same as the one that's in Project Churchill. So James this week has been starting to strip that down, starting to organise all the ancillaries, basically starting to get the wheels in motion for rebuilding that engine. It's the ideal time to do it because it's fresh in James and Adam's minds, because they've just finished the rebuild of the one for Churchill. We might as well crack straight on with this one. Now it's been pulled out of the XJC, and just get everything, all the wheels in motion on that, because XJC, as Nat will have said, is probably only a few days away from completed metalwork. Then it'll be into paint, so I want to try and get the wheels in motion with refurbishing all the relevant parts, subframes, engine, gearbox, etc., ahead of that shell being painted. So yeah, that's what James has been on with this week. And I think what I'm going to do now is head down the den and show you what's been going on down there. Welcome back to the den, and we're going to go straight over to here, and this massive beast that's on the ramp over here, which actually only just fits. This was actually one of the things we were slightly concerned about when we took on this unit, is there is a limitation on the length of vehicles we can fit on the ramps here because of the size and shape of the mezzanine, which is an absolutely wonderful feature, but it's borderline. Now, so far, it's not been a problem, and this fits okay, but one day we're going to get somebody wanting a limousine serviced, and we'll be absolutely up Pooh Creek, shall we say. Anyway, this is in for a mechanical inspection, and it's actually quite a good example. The guy with this wants an engine rebuild on it, but as per all new mechanical customers, we wanted to do a full inspection on it. And one of the reasons for that, as well as everybody being on the same page in terms of the car's condition, is that opportunity to identify the possibility the car might not be worth carrying out other work on. And I wonder whether this might fall into that category, because it does have some corrosion issues. And looking underneath it, it's one of those where it's not just localised bits, it's generally a little bit grotty underneath. Some bits have obviously gone through, there'll be some obvious bits of welding needed for MOT. But with the experience I have at RetroPower, I know these corrosion issues will end up being chased, and before you know it, you've pretty much got a full restoration on your hands. So, good inspection being done on it. We'll do a report back, and at least at that point, the customer does have the opportunity to kind of opt out of wasting money on mechanical work if the corrosion issues are not something they want to explore. So, we shall see how we get on with that, and no doubt I'll report back next week on that one. And then over here, we have another chap. So this man over here is Luke, who is joining Nick on the mechanical team down here. I haven't got a mic on him, so he can't say hello. But we've actually met quite some time ago. He came down, and it was funny. The first time I met him here, I was like, "You look really familiar," and he said, "Yeah, we've met before," because he'd been to RetroPower to have various bits done. I think it was just blasting components that he was getting powder coated for his car at the time. And yeah, we kind of got on very well at the time, so I was quite happy to see him joining Nick down here as the second member of the mechanical team. And I think this is his third day. Is it Wednesday today? No, it's Thursday, fourth day then. And he's working on the Rover V8 from the MG. So, as I mentioned last week, this has come back for a load of work that we estimated towards the end of last year. Full interior, which Rich will tell you more about. One of the things we also wanted to, well, one of the things we advised last time is there were some oil leaks that needed looking at. And that was kind of pushed into being a no-brainer to tackle, because he's also decided he wants a Tremec 5-speed gearbox conversion on it, at which point you've pretty much got to take the engine out anyway to get the gearbox off. So it made sense to go through any other remaining jobs on that at the same time. So we're going to be tackling that. We're going to whip the sump off. There's a load of surface corrosion on that, make that look a bit tidier. A couple of other little things that could just be tidied up cosmetically on that, but the engine itself is actually pretty solid. That's one of the overriding memories I have of this car when it was here before, was Nick flying off the road on test drive up here and it sounding like a NASCAR going around the Hinckley perimeter road here. So no, it's a cool thing. And then as a little bit of work we've been doing on it at Retro Power, which Luke might have mentioned actually. The other Luke, this is going to get confusing, is the audio system, which is kind of a job we needed to get out of the way prior to doing the upholstery. So we are putting some speakers in the back here. I was keen to avoid cutting them through the bulkhead to try and avoid digging into any of the boot space. So our plan there is that we've made some just basic plasma cut brackets. That's going to go onto the bulkhead. Speakers will mount on there, but then they'll also sandwich in a new trim panel that'll sit slightly forward of the rear bulkhead here. Only caveat we've got on this at the minute is I need to try the soft top in here and just make 100% sure that the soft top doesn't collide with it when it comes down. And then the front ones, rather than putting them in the doors, I wanted to avoid the complication of getting wiring into the doors. Also, there's not a lot of available depth in the doors because of the window regulator mech, so I was keen to put them in the kick panels. And the sort of further forward section of the kick panel is just a single skin, but it goes into the area behind the wheel, under the outer wing. So although there is a splash shield there, it's essentially open to the elements. So we wanted to make something to make sure those speakers weren't literally open to the elements on the back. So Luke's knocked up a design for a little housing that those speakers will sit into. This is just a prototype. He's going to do the final one in nylon because it's more temperature resistant and stronger, carbon reinforced nylon. The idea is that the speaker will go in there, that'll sandwich into the panel, and the back of the speaker will therefore be sealed from the elements. And then we've done a little port to obviously vent the air from behind the cone so it can move, and it also will route the wiring through there. So yeah, we're going to bite the bullet and cut some holes in this lovely MG, and then let these carbon pods into the kick panels. Speakers will mount in there. We've got these lovely Morel speakers that we've been using on a few projects now. The sound absolutely spot on. And they also do another range which we've used on the Allegro, the Virtus Nanos, which are insanely slim. Fairly expensive. These ones are a bit more reasonably priced and sound amazing for the money. So yeah, and then Richard will be able to do his kick panels to go over there and crack on with the rest of the interior. And also, Luke will have probably shown you the centre console he's working on, so that will be another one added to Richard's upholstery list. And on the subject of Richard, I'll hand over to him now to tell you what he's been up to.
How's it, everybody? Welcome back. I think last week I ended with, and maybe you'll see some seats. Voila, there's a seat, although it's not 100% complete. I've been off for one day, so not quite there, but all that's left is me finalizing that one over there, cutting the holes, getting it on, giving it a bit of heat, whacking the plastic parts on, and then I can bank this. So yeah, that's looking really smart. By the time it's all in place and everything's there, it's going to look really good. So chuffed with that. That all came out really nice. Next steps on the MG will be stripping out the dashboard, because we're doing the dash topper. And then I'll be doing some cards. I'll be stripping out all the carpets, basically I'm going to go back to just the metal, not bare metal, just the metal, because we're doing some Dynaliner and Dynamatting. Once I've done that, then I'll start patterning up the carpet. So for this week, this week it was the seats, so I'll probably finish these today, and then next week you'll see me cracking on with the rest of the stuff. I'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much, Richard. I think the only thing left for me to do is to say, well, to look longingly at this gorgeous Fiat over here and say that we will give you an update on that next week, because I think we will have started some work on that at that point. Until then, have a great rest of your weekend.